Let's see, the next item, review and possible approval of the recommendation from the Activities Review Committee to have the City Parks and Rec Director be an ex officio member.
So Tom isn't here. I thought Mr. Kern was going to be here, but back in November, the Activities Review Committee had actually made a recommendation that we eliminate one of the youth sport representatives and replace that position with the City of Toma Parks and Recreation Director as an ex officio member. So having the Parks and Rec, Mr. Protsby, sit in on the Activities Review Committee all the time, rather than having, when he served as the sports representative, he could only serve a 3-year term, and then he's off the committee. Mm-hmm. And the feeling is that we want to keep communication open with the city, especially with Parks and Rec and our activities, because I think as we look to, if we do have to make reductions in extracurricular programs, being able to talk to the city, how can you pick up some of this, or is there a program that can be provided that way, that we're collaborating more with them? So the committee did, Mr. Grosstein, you probably remember this because you wanted to make sure that if Mr. Protz was allowed to be, or the City Parks and Rec Director and ex officio, you had said that you would like to see them still be able to vote on issues that come before the committee. And Mr. Kern had shared that the most recent version of Robert's Rules of Order allows that, unless you specifically state in your bylaws that you can't do that. So there was a motion made by Mrs. Mosley at the time and seconded by Mr. Ziba, and that the committee was in favor of doing that. So I think it should come here to the full board for approval, since it is a board committee and we would be changing the configuration.
Do you know right offhand what's the makeup again? I mean, does it throw it off? It seems like absolutely the City Park and Rec person should be on that board, but are we taking away something from our youth, from our outside clubs being involved? Is that the membership? I can't remember what the numbers are.
Youth sports, so there would only be one youth sports representative, and then there'd be the City Rec person, and then there's some coaches, school activity advisors. I think they've had a hard time having 2 people from representing the sports groups.
Well, they've had a hard time having anybody there.
Yeah, the biggest thing I see about this committee is, I mentioned at the time a couple of times, and Deb knows this because this is what we ran into the last meeting we had. We got to get the people that make up the quorum there. The people that represent different areas, we got to have them there so we can run a decent meeting. And we haven't been able to do that on a couple occasions. Well, it happened last time, Deb.
And you said the time before that, too.
Yeah, there was another time in there. And I mentioned it to Tom, I said, make sure that these people understand that activities committee is important, and we need to have people there so we can have a decent meeting. Because otherwise it doesn't do anything, really, because we just sent a note to Sheila that this is what happened, but nothing factually happened because we didn't have a quorum. So that's one issue.
And my only concern was that to make sure we had that correlation and community involvement in the committee too, and make sure that stays. But
I was probably, when we talked about this initially, one that would have said non-voting rights on it. And
would have been, yeah.
That would have been mine, and simply because I don't want to say we compete, but there are times we compete on different things, or we have different opinions based on activities, and they always work out. They never had an issue where it couldn't be worked out. But this could be a long-serving member, from that's an ex officio that's sitting on our board, and if they're, really this is school business, I don't know if I'm making any sense. I just have a little concern about that. That's what I had stated to Cindy when we talked about it, having somebody from another entity having voting authority as an ex officio member.
For a long
Maybe they
period.
had for a long period of time.
Right.
When it's just
Other
3
people
years, it's
revolve
not
in
so
and out,
bad.
yeah.
And I can go either way. That was just my concern.
Well, he's invited to the meeting, Joe Protz. And when he's there, he's very boisterous on certain things that deal with the school. And just like the city school committee, there shouldn't be any separation because we're all part of the same group. I know where you're coming from, Greg, but as far as saying something at a meeting where he would give his opinion on an issue, I think with Joe it'd be an important thing for him to be able to vote. And I don't know where that's going to distract from any of the activities that happen on that committee. I don't think it will. Because when you get people there, there's 11 of them. If you get 11 of those members there, and there's communication around the table, and I've been there at those meetings, it's very good. So,
Well, maybe that makes more sense, Gary, if he is a voting member, then the other community member is one of the, is a member from one of the youth community sports that comes in. I guess then there's still 2 outside the city, outside the school, that are sitting and voting on that committee. So
I mean, the difference between this is, and the more I think about it, the more I get a little more twisted on this. There's only going to be 2 members that will not be rotating. That's going to be your athletic director and your
City Parks.
Committee.
your city parks and recs. That sets those 2 up for. Now, if you have the right personalities, everything works. Okay, it's all about personalities. But when you have 2 members that are permanent members that never rotate and they both have voting rights on it, my concern would be, and again, Joe's fine. Joe's a great guy, but I don't know who's going to be the next person any more than we know who the next athletic director or business manager is going to be. The point is that I'm not sure that's a good mix to have somebody from outside the organization be a long-term member and then have only one person from inside the organization be the other long-term member, because I'm just going to say it, if somebody doesn't like the school person and the decisions that they're representing, that really can place that person in a very difficult position.
But there's how many people on the committee?
So there's
Well,
11,
there's-
Gary?
there's myself and another
There's 2
board
board.
member.
There's 2 board members.
Yeah, that's
Tom,
and
Kern.
Deb.
So maybe it just needs to start out with him as an ex officio member. I think it is helpful to have him there on a regular basis, but just don't give him the voting right. And if, at some point down the road, the committee feels strongly about it, then Tom can come back and present that. But
That might be all right. He'd still have a voice in what's going on.
he's still gonna,
Under Robert rules, though, it is a voting member unless we specifically make it.
No, I think
No,
he
it's
said.
not, unless we specifically.
Normally, it's not.
It allows such members voting rights unless specifically restricted
See?
in the organization bylaws.
As
So,
an ex officio member?
Yeah.
yes,
Because we don't have
It's
those
allowed.
rights as.
Hey, you have voting rights on the library board.
right.
You're an ex officio.
No,
You're,
I'm,
you
yeah.
represent the school permanently on that
I'm an
committee.
officio and I don't vote.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure Tom typically voted. He chairs the meeting, so.
Yeah, he chairs it. but
Not-
Does this need to be decided tonight? Is it
No.
something that
Can this
be-
go to, should this
Yeah,
go
I
to
think it'd be
policy,
good-
or,
Yeah.
I think it needs to.
I mean, if it's a bylaw kind of thing, deciding whether or not ex officio should have voting rights, let's send it to policy and
Okay.
discuss it. I mean, it sounds like there's enough issue to not just decide it tonight.
Yeah, I would agree.
This is a very good committee because I've been a part of it when everybody's been there. And I think that's the big issue is to have the people know that there's a meeting. I think there's three or maybe 4 meetings a year.
Yeah, it's not a
So
huge.
it's not a big thing, but
Feels like they kind of get sprung on you though, doesn't it?
well, get these
Because
people to understand that
We need to maybe,
That might
this
be-
is a committee meeting.
I can be honest, if I was on the board facility member, as a business manager with the board facilities committee meeting, and you said you wanted to have the city
planner.
planner as being ex officio member, as a voting member, I would have
You'd have
some
reserve.
concerns about, I'd be very apprehensive about that.
Yep.
It's a good point.
And they're good people, any more than I don't think they want us on their committees as
Right.
voting members.
So what I'm hearing you say is you don't have any issue with him being ex officio and being on the committee and voicing his opinion, but it's the voting issue. So,
I used to be on that committee, and he always has good input. It's a
Yeah.
good thing to have
Yeah.
the city involved with that.
so we'll take it to policy for further discussion, then send a recommendation for policy perhaps back to the athletic review to see if you can support that and then have that come back.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Frustrated.
Sorry.